Hi everybody, Miss Rachel at Farmingdale Public Library here, and today I'm going to show you how to build an igloo from ice cubes. For this activity, you will need a bunch of square ice cubes like I have here in this tray. You do want to use the square ones, not rounded ones for this activity. You'll want a cup or a bowl of cold water to dip your ice cubes in, and a round flat brick of ice. I made this ice by pouring some water into a pie pan and freezing it. I've then peeled down the sides of my pie pan here, the foil, so that you can better see it as I build. You might also want a pair of gloves to protect your hands from the cold, and some salt will help hold the structure together if you find that it's too slippery. You'll also need access to the freezer, and when your structure is finished, you could paint the outside using some Q-tips and food coloring if you'd like. So shall we get started? The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a couple of ice cubes and build the outside of our structure. The way we're going to do this is by dipping our ice into the water to start it to melt a little, and then sticking it onto the base. Now notice that the ice is sticking to my fingers now, so you do want to be careful with this. So I'm going to go around the outside of my structure, dipping the ice cubes into the water quick to help make it stick. Now I've left a gap right here at the edge of my structure so that I can take two ice cubes and instead stack them up vertically instead of horizontally. This is to build the outside. This is my doorway. Now you can make this doorway wider if you'd like, or narrower. I'm going to do it narrower today because my pie tray is pretty small. Now I'm going to pop this back into the freezer for a couple of minutes so that it'll set. See you in a minute. All right, my friends, now that this is frozen a little bit more solid, as you can see, I'm picking it up. I'm going to put on my next layer. The way that I'm going to do that is by dipping my ice again and going over the next layer of blocks in the spaces from the previous layer. Now I'm also going to be putting one ice cube over the top of my doorway to make a roof. Okay, now I'm going to pop this back into the freezer very carefully and leave it for another few minutes. Be careful moving it because the taller your structure gets, the more difficult it will be to move without sliding. See you in a minute. All right, my friends, now that I have 2 layers of wall and 1 layer of roof, let's build our third layer. I'm going to dip my third layer into the ice, and I'm going to start from the piece by the roof. If I can, that piece might not hold, so we'll have to come back to that one. And I'm going to build around and make a third layer. I'm going to pop this back into the freezer for another few minutes, and then we'll continue building with our next layer. All right, friends, let's build our next layer. So this is why you might want to wear gloves, is because the longer you are building your structure, the colder your hands are going to get, and you don't want to get clumsy with this. Notice that the higher up my structure is getting, the more cone-shaped it is becoming. The reason for this is because the width of the ice cubes is making it get narrower. Now, in case you're wondering how many minutes I've waited in between each layer, it's been between 4 and 7, but my first layer I left in for about 2.5. So if you wait 5 minutes between each layer, you should be good to go. But you might have to press them on a little bit harder depending upon how tall you're building it as well, because the bigger your structure, the longer it's going to take to freeze. That one I might have to come back to and press it again. Also, you can always try dipping your cubes, laying them on, and then come back to press them down a second time in a little bit. I'm going to continue building up this spiral until the hole at the roof gets a little bit smaller. My friends, and when you get to the top of your ice structure, you can build the roof of it by two different ways. You can either continue going up the spiral of the roof until eventually all the pieces touch together like this, or you can do as I did. I took 3 ice cubes and laid them into the space at the top of mine to build a roof. Instead of laying them horizontally like this, I put them in vertically to fill in the hole and create the roof of my igloo. This is my finished igloo. As you can see, it's pretty tall. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers tall, with the roof built in to the 5th layer. And my doorway is right over here. See, I just put my finger through it. So I hope you had a good time building an ice igloo with me. Now that the igloo is done, if you let it freeze for a little longer, you can then paint the outside using a Q-tip and some watercolor paint. Or you could also use some food dye. Just be careful, because food dye will look very, very nice. It'll look by far the most beautiful, but it will stain your clothing. So, if you do decide to do that, please wear a napkin or an old shirt. I hope you had a good time making an igloo with me, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon in some of our other programs. Whew, it's chilly out there, so stay warm, and I'll see you soon. Have a nice day.